The bankrupt rich woman felt sorry for and took in a vagabond with a child. But when she returned from a business trip a week later, she was stunned. Caitlyn looked at her cottages and thought that her last attempt to succeed had failed. She seemed to have thought everything through, calculated everything, but nothing worked out. Everything went wrong immediately. There were no people in the village who could help her. The money ran out before everything was finished. How it happened, she couldn't understand. Probably, her haste and hope for luck played a cruel joke on her again. Someone had offered to buy her idea, but for such a ridiculous amount of money that she just wanted to burn those cottages so that they wouldn't exist. And certainly, so she wouldn't have to watch someone else profit from her idea. She regretted getting into all of this. But then again, who doesn't want to live better? Caitlyn had noticed this village a long time ago. She had come here on a friend's recommendation. There were some healing springs here that few people knew about. That year, Caitlyn was constantly sick. One illness would end, and another would start immediately. She had lost weight, weakened, and wasn't even interested in working anymore. Then she remembered her friend's words that the local air and water could bring even the dead back to life. Gradually, business in the city was declining. Who knows why? Maybe she had chosen the wrong niche, or maybe too many competitors had appeared. But Caitlyn firmly decided, while there was an opportunity, she needed to change her field of activity. She calculated everything. She just didn't calculate one thing. During the construction and preparation, everything in the world could change. And the first thing that changed, of course, was the prices. Caitlyn sat on the porch of her house. At least she had managed to finish it. But, to be honest, what good was it now if she didn't have the money to maintain such a big house? No money to finish the other cottages, advertise, or buy everything necessary for the first period. "Hello, Miss Hayes. Taking a break?" An old lady was passing by. She lived nearby and loved to chat with Caitlyn. The hostess didn't really welcome such idle conversation but behaved politely, occasionally even answering questions. By the way, the villagers considered Caitlyn to be arrogant, rude, and haughty. To be fair, they weren't wrong. Years in business had made her that way. She didn't trust people, didn't have friends, and hadn't started a family. "Hello, Martha." "Yes." Caitlyn turned away to avoid further conversation. She didn't want to talk to the neighbor, or anyone at all. The old lady shook her head and moved on, while Caitlyn started to pack. She was leaving for a week today. She needed to go to the city. There was a chance to get money at a very low interest rate. Caitlyn needed to find a knowledgeable person, go over everything with them once more, and then decide whether to get involved or not. The agreement was very unclear. The woman had just taken her bags outside when she felt someone watching her. Damn, this was the last thing she needed. Sure enough, someone was waiting for her to leave. Oh, she had thought about hiring a guard, but as always, forgot and got caught up in other things. Caitlyn turned sharply. In front of her stood a fairly young man. Well, young. About 40, no more. Or maybe even younger if he shaved his beard. He was holding a girl about 4 or 5 years old by the hand. "Hello." Before Caitlyn answered, she looked around. Was she seeing things? Where did they come from? "Hello." The man hurried to speak. "Please forgive us. People on the bus said that there's construction and work going on here. Do you have any work for me? I can do a lot of things." Caitlyn looked questioningly at the child, and the man understood without words. "Don't worry, I didn't steal her. She's my daughter. I'm raising her alone. She's often sick, and the doctor said we should move to the countryside for at least a year. So, we're looking for a place to stay." The woman smiled sadly. "Well, it's not all rosy here. Work has stopped, and the money is gone. So, I probably won't be able to help you." The man looked at her seriously. "Listen, we can help in exchange for shelter, do some work. I can do construction and electrical work if needed." Caitlyn took a deep breath, shook her head, and replied, "You know, you can stay." My house is big. There's plenty of food in the fridges. Stay, and you can guard the place. When I return, we'll see if I need a worker or if I'll sell everything. Sell? Why? This place is amazing. I've read a lot about it, that's why I brought my daughter here. You'll have plenty of guests. Yeah, it's just like you said. I found salvation here myself. But it didn't work out for me. While I was building this, everything got so expensive that now, sorry, I can't even get the sewage connected or the wiring done. Oh. Caitlyn waved her hand and grabbed her bag. I need to leave for about a week. I completely forgot that I needed to find a table. So, if you're okay with everything. The man rummaged in his bag and handed something to his companion. Here, take this so you don't worry. Caitlyn, seeing the passport, smirked. You know, I don't trust people at all. And now I thought it's time to change. How will you manage without a passport? What if something happens with the child? The man smiled. You know, I heard so much about you on the bus that I was afraid to come. But you are completely different. My name is Ethan. Miss Hayes. The keys are in the kitchen drawer. Make yourself at home here. If anyone asks, I'll be back in 7 or 8 days. Caitlyn patted the little girl on the hair, smiled, received a wide smile in return, and walked towards the car. Life is an interesting thing, indeed. Just a day ago, she would have laughed at anyone who said she would leave her house to a complete stranger, but now she was leaving quite calmly. She felt that nothing would happen. Everything was right. But if something did happen, she would be worthless as a person. And, moreover, as a businesswoman with such an instinct. Caitlyn drove thoughtfully along the winding road, returning from the city to the village. The evening twilight enveloped the surrounding landscapes with a soft light, giving them a mysterious beauty. She replayed the events of the past week in her mind, not noticing how time flew by. The city greeted her once again with its familiar hustle and bustle, but this time the trip was special. The meeting with Thomas, a successful entrepreneur, left a strange feeling in her soul. When she first drove into the city, her head was full of plans and tasks. She was striving to find a way to improve her village life, not sell it. But when Thomas invited her to lunch, everything changed. Thomas turned out to be an elegant man, with charm and confidence in every move. Their meeting took place in a cozy little restaurant, away from the noise and crowds. They settled at a table by the window, with a view of the bustling street. Thomas started the conversation with light topics, but soon got down to business. Caitlyn, he began, putting the menu on the table, I have learned about your property in the village. The plots with houses by the lake. A beautiful place, I must admit. Yes, it is indeed a wonderful place, Caitlyn agreed, feeling a slight excitement. You know, I've thought for a long time and I want to offer you a deal. Thomas looked straight into her eyes, as if trying to read her thoughts. I am ready to buy all your plots. I can offer a good price, much higher than the market value. Caitlyn pondered, digesting what she had heard. She did not expect such an offer and did not know how to react. Strange, the purpose of the meeting was completely different, but there was nothing to be surprised about. This is business. Where there is business, there is no honesty. Thoughts whirled in her head. This was a chance to get rid of all problems and start a new life, but at the same time, she felt that this village had become part of her soul. Thomas, she began cautiously, why are you so interested in my plots? I have big plans for this place, he replied, smiling. I want to build a complex of elite cottages there, to create something unique. I think it will benefit both the village and you. Caitlyn looked at Thomas and realized that his offer was tempting, but her heart did not want to let go of what had become dear to her. The woman felt she had to make a choice that would change her entire life. I need time to think, she said, feeling the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. This is an important decision. Of course, Thomas nodded, as if expecting such an answer. Take as much time as you need. I'm sure you'll make the right decision. The lunch continued in a lighter atmosphere, But the thoughts about the offer did not leave Caitlyn. She returned to the village with a heavy heart, pondering what to do. By selling the plots, she could solve all her financial problems, but she would lose the place that had become her real home. She was just entering the village. Evening had long fallen, and it was about to get completely dark. Kate tried not to look towards the lake, where her beautiful cottages stood. She had grown so attached to them and invested so much of her soul into them that the mere thought of having to sell a part of her life was unbearable. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't help but glance in that direction, and then she abruptly hit the brakes. Lights were on in 3 of the cottages. Real, electric lights. That simply couldn't be, because there wasn't even any wiring in those houses. It was still packed in sealed boxes in one of the homes. While Kate processed what she had seen, her gaze drifted further. It was some kind of fantasy. On the lake, right behind the cottages, a pier had been built. Large enough to take a walk on while sipping coffee. There were tables under umbrellas. According to Kate's plans, lanterns were supposed to illuminate the pier's railing. She hadn't even gotten around to the railing, let alone the lanterns. But now, not only was the railing installed, but lanterns were glowing all around the perimeter. Someone was bustling around them. The woman decisively turned the wheel. She needed to figure out what was going on there. Kate drove up to the cottages and turned off the engine. She heard soft music playing. The woman involuntarily froze. It was her favorite band. What could she say? It was pure mysticism. But Kate didn't believe in mysticism, so she quickly dismissed the silly thought and got out of the car, walking briskly toward the person bustling around the cottages. After taking a few steps, she stopped. It was Ethan. She had completely forgotten about the uninvited guests. And there was the girl, sitting on a chair at the table, looking at something on her phone. The child was wrapped in a blanket like a cocoon, with only her hands and face sticking out. Kate looked around. What was this? Had he done this all by himself? That couldn't be. She had estimated how much it would cost to call in an electrician crew more than once. Hello, Ethan. The man turned and gave a bright, wide smile. You're back? Hello. I just decided to do something. Just something? I thought to do this, I would need to sell a kidney at least. Ethan laughed. Miss Hayes, it's no big deal. I connected the lights and we cleaned up with my daughter. In short, you can move in. How, move in? The woman felt a timid hope stir somewhere inside her. Well, the cottages are almost ready to welcome guests. Oh no, I'm lying, a couple still need work. But the rest are fully operational, so to speak. They wandered through the houses for an hour. Kate increasingly realized that this man, whom she had practically left in her home by accident, had literally become her savior. The girl was in his arms. The woman saw that the little one was tired and already nodding off. Sweetie, how about coming to me? Let's go home. The girl smiled and crawled over to Kate. She handed Ethan the keys. Can you get the car? We'll manage here. The man looked a bit embarrassed. Of course. Is it not too much for you? No, not at all. How could such a wonder be heavy? Kate couldn't even admit to herself that she wouldn't have given the child back to her father right now. The girl snuggled trustingly into the woman, and Kate felt so good, so cozy, as if she had been born just to hold the little one in her caring arms. They were sitting at the table. Ruby had just managed to eat her last bite before falling asleep right there. Ethan had already carried her to bed and sat down next to Caitlyn. You know, I can see how much better Ruby is doing. She sleeps through the night now. In the city, she would wake up 10 times a night. She's got her appetite back. Although, she's covered in scratches and bruises. Here, she's either pretending to be a frog or chasing away a rooster. She's running around all day. I'm so grateful to you. Caitlyn waved her hands. Are you crazy? I'm the one who's grateful to you. Just a few days ago, I was ready to give up on my idea, and now I understand. Together, we can make it. Ethan, I want to offer you a partnership. We'll discuss the details later, but I promise I won't cheat you. There'll be enough for a good life with Ruby. He looked at her in surprise. Are you serious? But I haven't done anything special. You've done more than enough. You've kept me from losing faith in life. And by the way, let's use first names. Ethan's smile lit up the room. They wished each other good night and went to bed. The late evening enveloped the village in the soft light of the moon, reflecting off the calm surface of the lake. Caitlyn strolled slowly along the shore, enjoying the tranquility and beauty of the surrounding nature. She felt the fresh evening air fill her lungs, calming her thoughts and relieving the tension of the past day. In the distance, near the cottages, lanterns flickered, further immersing her in the cozy atmosphere. Music played quietly from the speakers, and Caitlyn felt at home. She stopped at the water's edge, looking at her reflection, and took a deep breath, savoring the moment of solitude. Suddenly, she heard footsteps behind her. Turning around, she saw Ethan approaching her, smiling. "Hi," he said softly, stopping next to her. "Ruby's already asleep. I thought maybe we could take a walk together." Caitlyn smiled back and nodded. "Sure, Ethan. I was just thinking of getting some exercise before bed." They walked along the shore, enjoying the silence and the occasional sound of waves breaking against the rocks. The moon lit their path, creating a magical atmosphere. "You know, I wanted to tell you something," Ethan began, looking thoughtfully at Caitlyn. "A story about how I ended up alone with Ruby." Caitlyn looked at him with interest. "Tell me. I'd really like to know more about you and Ruby." Ethan sighed and quietly, barely audibly, began his story. "My wife Sarah and I lived in a small town. She was an incredible woman, full of life and energy. We met in college and had been inseparable since. When Ruby was born, we were over the moon with happiness. But unfortunately, our happiness was short-lived." He paused for a moment, recalling the past. His eyes began to fill with tears. Sarah got sick. The doctors found a rare form of cancer, and she fought as hard as she could, but the disease was stronger. When she passed away, it felt like my world collapsed. I was left alone with a small daughter in my arms and didn't know how to go on. Ruby and I moved from city to city. I looked for work to secure her future, but I couldn't find my place anywhere. Caitlyn listened, feeling the pain in his voice. She understood how hard it had been for him to go through such a loss. "That must have been very hard," she said softly, supporting him. Ethan nodded, wiped away his tears, and continued. "Yes, it was not easy. But Ruby always gave me the strength to keep going. She is my light, my reason for living. I decided to move to the village to give her a chance at a healthy and happy life. When we came here, I didn't know what to expect. But, meeting you, I realized it was the right choice." He looked at Caitlyn, and she saw gratitude and tenderness in his eyes. "You gave us hope, Caitlyn. I don't know what we would have done without you." Caitlyn felt her heart fill with warmth from his words. She stopped and turned to Ethan, feeling embarrassed and awkward. "Ethan," she began, lowering her eyes, "you have no idea how much you've done for me and this village. You are an incredible person, and Ruby is very lucky to have a father like you." Ethan took her hand in his and gently squeezed it. Caitlyn felt her heart beat faster, and her embarrassment grew. "You know, I also wanted to say that this place has become home for us. Ruby and I have finally found peace here." Caitlyn's eyes began to fill with tears. She quickly withdrew her hand, trying to hide her emotions. "Ethan, I need to. I'd better go," she muttered, feeling herself blush. "It's already late, and there's a lot of work tomorrow." Ethan looked surprised and shook his head slightly, but then nodded respectfully. "Of course, Kate. Let's meet for breakfast tomorrow instead. I still need to prepare for the season." They slowly headed towards the cottages, each lost in their own thoughts. Caitlyn felt her heart beating in unison with her steps. The hostess was busy with her morning chores when her phone rang. The screen displayed a name she hadn't seen in a long time, Sam. He was her first love, back in college. But, fortunately or unfortunately, life had led them down different paths. Sam called occasionally, and they had managed to maintain a friendly relationship after a difficult breakup. A bit surprised, Caitlyn answered the call. "Hi, Kate, it's Sam," said a familiar voice. "Sorry to bother you so suddenly, but I need help. I'm near your village, and my car broke down. Could you help me?" Caitlyn agreed without hesitation. She grabbed her car keys and drove to the location Sam described over the phone. Within minutes, she saw him standing by his car, which clearly needed repairs. A smile spread across her face. "Sam!" she exclaimed, getting out of the car. "I can't believe my eyes. What are you doing here?" "Hi, Kate," Sam said, hugging her. "Well, I wanted to go for a drive, but my car decided it needed a brake too." Cars, they're like that," joked Kate. "Do you remember how my old clunker left us stranded in the middle of the forest?" "Of course, I remember," Sam laughed. "We spent 2 hours trying to call a tow truck and ended up walking to the gas station. It was fun." "Well, let's see what you've got here," said Kate, looking under the car's hood. Not my specialty, but it looks serious. We have a garage on the way to the village. I can arrange a tow." "Great," Sam replied. "Thanks, Kate. Honestly, I didn't know who else to call. Everyone else is far away and busy with their own things, and you've always been a lifesaver." "Well, what can I say?" she said with a smile. "Let's go, I'll show you everything." They drove together to the garage, where Kate helped arrange the car repair. While the mechanics worked on the car, Sam suggested they have coffee at a nearby cafe. "Thanks for helping me out," Sam said as they sat at a table. "I really didn't expect to end up in this situation." "Don't worry, Sam," Kate replied, smiling. "But what are you doing in these parts anyway? Wanted to go for a drive, you said?" "Yeah, a drive. Investors in the next town. Decided to explore new business opportunities. Heard about some promising projects in this area, so here I am," Sam explained, winking. "Actually, I thought maybe I'd find a treasure or at least a gold mine." "Well, I can't promise you treasure, but coffee and pastries, sure," Kate laughed. "I remember how you always dreamed of finding a place to invest in a worthwhile project." "Right," Sam agreed. "And it looks like I've found the place. But what do I see? You've really transformed everything here." "Well, it wasn't easy," Kate replied. "But, sometimes I think all this work is what keeps me afloat." "Yeah, work is good, but don't forget to rest too," Sam noted kindly. "Otherwise, you'll turn into a real workaholic, God forbid." Kate laughed. "Oh, I've been in that club for a long time, Sam. But thanks for the concern." After coffee, Kate suggested that Sam stay in one of her cottages while his car was being repaired. "You can stay with me for a few days while they fix your car. You can also see what I've been up to here," Kate offered. "That would be great, thanks, Kate," Sam replied gratefully. "I hope you don't have any ghosts here." "Only if you bring them yourself," she winked. "Come on, I'll show you your cottage." They walked through the village to the cottages, and Sam was impressed with their condition. "Wow, you've really put a lot into this," he said, looking around at the renovated cottages. "I've always been amazed at how you manage to create coziness anywhere." "Yes, and now it seems this is my home," Kate said with a smile. Later that evening, they sat on the terrace of one of the cottages, enjoying the peace of village life. The air was filled with the pleasant scent of freshly cut grass, and the distant sound of water splashing from the lake could be heard. The terrace was cozy, illuminated by soft lantern lights, adding a special charm to the moment. "So, how's your personal life, Sam?" Caitlyn asked, raising an eyebrow. "Found anyone yet?" Sam smirked, leaning back in his chair and looking at the stars. "Kate, it's not really working out," he replied. "Work, trips, startups. I meet people now and then, but nothing serious. The woman nodded understandingly. Yes, I also have a lot going on, Kate replied, somewhat thoughtfully. This project takes up all my time and energy. Sometimes it feels like my personal life has faded far into the background. Sam looked at her with interest. You know, I never cease to admire your determination. But maybe you should take breaks sometimes? You're right, Kate admitted. It's just hard to find time for myself. It's not at all like it was in carefree youth. The man smiled, tilting his head slightly to one side. You can't argue with that. College days now seem the easiest and best in life. He fell silent abruptly, but after a short pause, continued. You know, Kate, you've always been special to me. Even after our paths diverged, I couldn't forget you. Caitlyn tensed slightly. She didn't know what to say, and at that moment, she heard approaching footsteps. Turning, she saw Ethan walking towards the terrace with a friendly smile on his face. Hi, Kate, Ethan said as he came closer. Sorry to intrude, but I couldn't just walk by. Is everything okay? Hi, Ethan, Caitlyn replied, trying to appear calm. Everything's fine. Let me introduce my old friend. Ethan, this is Sam, we went to college together. Sam, this is Ethan, he's helping me with the cottages. Sam stood up and extended his hand with a smile. Nice to meet you, Ethan. The man smiled and shook hands with Sam. Likewise, Sam. Nice to meet you. An awkward pause ensued, and Ethan, noticing it, decided to take control of the situation. Well, I won't keep you. Tomorrow is a busy day, need to get some rest. Of course, Caitlyn said, a bit puzzled by his hasty departure. Good night, Ethan. Good night, he replied, turning and heading towards his cottage. After he left, Caitlyn was lost in thought for a moment. Sam, watching her expression, cautiously asked, Is everything all right? Yes, she replied, trying to understand her feelings. Just a bit surprised. Ethan is usually not so withdrawn. Sam smiled, trying to lighten the mood. Maybe he's just tired. This air can knock anyone off their feet. Caitlyn laughed, but her thoughts kept returning to Ethan. She couldn't understand what was happening, but she felt burgeoning feelings for him that began to confuse her. All right, Sam, let's call it a day, she said, standing up. Tomorrow is a new day, and hopefully, your car will get a new lease on life. Sure, Kate, Sam responded, standing up with a light smile and a disappointed look on his face. Good night. As Caitlyn went to bed, her thoughts were still occupied with Ethan. She couldn't forget his tense gaze and hasty departure. Soon, fatigue took over. The next day, Caitlyn walked along the path, breathing in the cool air and enjoying the tranquility of nature. Her thoughts were occupied with the previous day, meeting Sam and the awkward emotions from his visit. A couple of hours ago, Sam received a call from the auto shop, informing him that the problem wasn't serious and the car was ready for pickup. After lunch, Sam left. Kate was brought out of her thoughts by a small figure darting ahead. Approaching, she recognized Ruby, Ethan's young daughter. Caitlyn hurried to her. Hi, Ruby, she smiled. What are you doing here alone? The little girl looked up at her, and Caitlyn noticed some anxiety in her eyes. Miss Caitlyn, I'm lost, the girl admitted, clutching a small toy. Oh no, how did that happen? Caitlyn asked, concerned. I saw a squirrel and ran after it, Ruby began to explain, but it disappeared, and I got lost. Caitlyn nodded, understanding how easy it was to get lost in this dense forest. Well, you're safe now, Rue, she said reassuringly. Let's find your dad. On the way back to the cottages, Ruby curiously examined the world around her, her eyes sparkling with wonder. She stopped at every bush and rock, looking for something special she had never seen before. Dad said that magical fairies live by the lake here, Ruby said, looking up at Kate with a mysterious and sincere belief in her voice. Kate smiled, looking at the little girl with admiration. She marveled at the child's ability to look at the world with an open heart. How interesting, Kate responded, continuing to build Ruby's fantasy world. And how do you think these fairies look? The girl thought for a moment, clutching her toy doll. I think they are invisible, but they can appear dark as night or bright as the sun, Rue suggested, squinting her eyes and peering into the dense foliage, searching for answers to her questions. You have a wonderful imagination, Ruby, Kate praised her. And if we meet the fairies, what will we say to them? The little girl looked up at Kate and, with a smile that lit up her face like rays of sunshine piercing through the trees, chattered. I'll tell them that we have a new friend, Kate, and we're so happy to see her. And they'll probably give us magic wands, exclaimed Rue, filled with pure joy. The woman laughed too, enjoying the moment. Miss Caitlyn, what is imagination? Ruby asked, turning to the older companion with a curious look. Kate smiled and knelt down to be at eye level with Rue. She gently stroked the girl's head, trying to find simple words. Imagination, Ruby, is like magic inside us. It's the ability to see the world not only as it is, but as we dream it to be. We can create our own stories, invent new worlds and adventures. Imagination helps us make our life more interesting and bright. Ruby listened to Kate attentively, her eyes sparkling with fascination. So, imagination makes my life a fairy tale? She asked with excitement. Yes, exactly, just like a fairy tale, replied Kate with a smile. And if you want, we can come up with our own fairy tale right now. Ruby nodded enthusiastically, beaming with anticipation to hear a new story. At that moment, Ethan appeared. His steps were quick and restless, but his eyes shone with relief and joy. Ruby, where have you been? Ethan approached, hurrying to embrace his daughter. Sorry, Dad. I got lost, but Miss Caitlyn found me. Ethan looked up at Kate, a warm smile spreading across his face. Thank you, Kate. You're a real guardian angel. No problem, Ethan. I'm always ready to help you. Even though I don't have a magic wand, the woman winked at Ruby, already preparing to leave, but the little girl grabbed her hand. What about our fairy tale? Right, the fairy tale. How about I come over to your place with your dad a bit later? The fairy has given me some treats for you. You can have a snack, and then we'll come up with a story. It's much easier to think on a full stomach, Kate said, stroking the little girl's head lovingly. Sounds like a great plan for the evening. Ethan tried to hide the too bright joy in his voice, but he managed no better than Ruby, who started jumping in anticipation. The man watched Caitlyn leave and, taking his daughter in his arms, headed home. There were a few days left before the first guests arrived. Caitlyn, despite financial troubles, was optimistic. Ethan was working on improving the cabins, and she herself noticed her feelings for him growing stronger. Caitlyn was also becoming attached to Ruby, who was increasingly showing her affection and openness. She decided not to sell the plots and to focus on developing her project. Thomas's offer was almost forgotten, drowned in a series of daily concerns. Kate was walking alone near the cabins, enjoying rare moments of peace. Her thoughts wandered between plans for the future and moments spent with Ethan and Ruby. Suddenly, her phone rang, pulling her out of pleasant thoughts. Hello? She answered, looking at the screen. The number was unfamiliar. Good evening, Miss Hayes. This is Thomas, a confident voice came from the other end of the line. Caitlyn immediately remembered his offer and felt a wave of anxiety approaching. Hello, Thomas. To what do I owe the pleasure? I wanted to know if you've made a decision about my offer. We have limited time, and I need to know if I can count on your property. Caitlyn paused for a moment, her thoughts swirling. She recalled all her conversations with Ethan, warm moments with Ruby, and her own dreams. Thomas, I've thought long and hard about your offer, she began cautiously. But I've decided to keep the plots and develop the project on my own. There was a pause on the other end of the line, after which Thomas continued. Is that your final decision? Are you sure you can manage without our help? Caitlyn took a deep breath, trying to collect her thoughts. Yes, that's my final decision. I believe I can manage. Her voice sounded firm and confident. Thomas sighed, a note of disappointment in his response. All right. I wish you luck in your endeavor, Miss Hayes. If you change your mind, you know where to find me. Caitlyn thanked him and hung up. She looked around, breathing in the fresh evening air. Her heart was filled with calm and confidence in the rightness of her decision. Time and nature flew by relentlessly. Kate walked across the property, enjoying the warm, sunny day. She stopped by one of the cabins, noticing Ethan hard at work repairing the railing. He was focused, his movements confident and precise. Caitlyn watched him with admiration, feeling her heart start to beat faster. Hi, Ethan, she called out as she approached. How's it going? Hi, Katie, he replied, wiping sweat from his forehead. Almost done, just this part of the railing left. Kate smiled at the affectionate nickname, but the next moment her heart skipped a beat. Ethan, trying to attach one of the boards, suddenly lost his balance. The board slipped, and his hand got caught between the two railings. Damn, he exclaimed, trying to free his hand but to no avail. Caitlyn instantly ran to him, her eyes wide with concern. Ethan, are you okay? She asked, grabbing his shoulder. It hurts a bit, he smiled weakly, trying to hide his pain. Seems like my hand is stuck. She carefully freed his hand, seeing a small scrape and some redness. You need to treat that wound, she said, inspecting the injury closely. Come on, I have a first aid kit. Ethan, still feeling the pain, nodded. Caitlyn led him toward her house, her heart pounding with worry. They sat on the porch, and she quickly brought out the first aid kit. You shouldn't risk so much for a railing, Caitlyn said softly as she treated his wound. Do you always work so carelessly? I'm usually more careful, Ethan laughed, trying to mask his pain. But maybe you distracted me. Caitlyn smiled, their eyes met, and for a moment, time stood still. Distracted you? She asked, feeling her cheeks start to flush. I was just passing by. Well, you never just pass by, he replied with a grin. You always find a way to brighten up the day. At that moment, Ruby ran out of the cabin, looking worriedly at her father. Daddy, she cried when she saw his hand. Are you okay? Ethan leaned down to his daughter, hugging her with one arm. It's all right, sweetheart, he reassured her. Just a small scrape. Caitlyn is helping me. Ruby looked at Kate, her eyes full of gratitude and trust. Thank you, Miss Caitlyn, she said quietly. Ruby, please, just call me Aunt Kate, Caitlyn smiled. And don't worry, your dad will be fine soon. Ruby snuggled up to her father, and Ethan, looking at Caitlyn, smiled gently. You always help us out, Kate, he said. I don't know what we would do without you. Caitlyn felt a warm, pleasant feeling fill her heart. I'm always here for you, she replied, feeling a special bond forming between them. Despite the pain, Ethan stood up, hugging his daughter with one arm, the other carefully holding the treated wound. Maybe you should rest a bit, Caitlyn suggested, looking at him with concern. You've been working all day. I can't afford to rest, Ethan shook his head. There's so much to do before the guests arrive. Ruby and I can help, Caitlyn offered, kneeling down next to the little girl. Right, Ruby? The child smiled and nodded, her eyes sparkling. Of course, I can hand you tools or hold something, she said enthusiastically. Ethan laughed, looking at his daughter and Caitlyn. All right, if you say so, he agreed. Just remember, the work has to be safe. Smiling, Caitlyn nodded. She was happy to be around these wonderful people, helping them and seeing how they were building something beautiful together. We'll be careful, she promised with a smile. And we'll handle everything together. Ethan looked at her with gratitude. Ruby, still holding her father's hand, was happy to see their little family grow even stronger. All right, girls, the man said with a smile. Let's finish the repairs so everything is ready for the guests' arrival." Caitlyn and Ruby exchanged glances and laughed, and they all headed towards the cottages together. In the morning, there was a knock on Caitlyn's door. She opened it and saw an elderly couple standing before her, Martha and John. They lived in the same village, and Caitlyn recognized them by sight but had never spoken to them closely. "Good morning, Miss Hayes," Martha began with a warm smile. "My husband and I decided to drop by and talk to you." "Hello, Martha, John. Come in." Caitlyn invited them inside, sensing that these people had come with something important. They sat at the table, and Caitlyn offered them tea. As the water boiled, she noticed John looking around the house and nodding, clearly pleased with what he saw. "We saw Ethan and his little one working on the cottages," John began, looking at Caitlyn. "Vacationers must be arriving soon." Caitlyn nodded, feeling her heart beat faster. All of this was so close and so important to her. "Yes, exactly. We hope our guests will feel cozy and peaceful here," she replied, trying to hide her excitement. Martha leaned forward slightly, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "We would like to propose a collaboration," she said. "John and I have our own farm. We grow fresh vegetables and fruits and keep a few cows and chickens. We thought if you placed an advertisement for our products in the cottages, it would be beneficial for everyone." Caitlyn smiled, understanding that Martha and John were genuinely trying to help and offer something useful. "That's a great idea," she replied. "I think our guests will be happy to buy fresh farm products." John nodded, his face serious. "We can't offer much, Miss Hayes. Just a small fee for the advertisement. But, if you agree, it will help us continue to work and develop." Caitlyn pondered. Life in the village was beginning to take on new meaning, and these people were becoming a part of it. She felt she wanted to do something kind for her neighbors. "You know," she began, smiling, "I was thinking. We don't need to charge for the advertisement. We should probably help each other more often. I would be happy to place information about your farm and the cottages for free. It's the least I can do for you." Martha and John exchanged surprised looks. Grateful smiles appeared on their faces. "That's so generous of you, Miss Hayes," John said, his voice trembling with emotion. "We don't even know how to thank you." A pleasant warmth spread through Caitlyn's body. She saw that her decision brought joy to these people, and, surprisingly, it made her very happy. "Just call me Caitlyn," she said softly. "And let's work together for the good of our village." They spent some more time discussing the details of their collaboration. Caitlyn shared her plans for the future, while Martha and John shared their stories about the farm and village life. This conversation filled the house with a special coziness and a sense of community. When the elderly couple left, Caitlyn felt that her decision to stay in the village and develop this project was the best she had ever made in her life. She knew there was still a lot of work ahead, but with friends and neighbors like these, she could easily handle any difficulties. Soon after the first guests arrived, it became clear that they had succeeded. People were thrilled. Not only did they feel better, but they also gained strength in just a few days. Martha and John's idea was a hit too. The guests would visit the farmers daily, buying up everything they could eat at a premium price. Natural products were like manna from heaven for people from the city slums. By autumn, as the season was coming to an end, Kate was relaxing on the pier with a cup of coffee. Someone sat down next to her. She knew it was Ethan. "Caitlyn, we might leave." The woman was so scared that she couldn't hide her anxiety. "Where? Why? You have work here." Ethan sighed heavily and looked thoughtfully at the water. "I'm going to tell you everything now, just don't interrupt. It's very hard for me. I never thought it could be this hard. You are a business person, and I am like a stray dog. I can't do this anymore. It's not even that, but I can't be near you. I can't. I can't look at you, and I can't do anything. In another situation, I would have shared my feelings, tried to impress you. But I am, you could say, without a penny to my name and with a child. Let us leave. I don't need anything, I'll just go. Kate didn't turn to him, afraid he might see her smiling. Smiling a silly, happy smile. Ethan fell silent, and for a couple of minutes, silence hung between them. Then the woman spoke. I won't let you leave. This is not even up for discussion. And if you do leave, I will drop everything and follow you. Kate looked into Ethan's eyes and continued, You know, I always thought I was made just to work. But now I would drop everything without hesitation to be with you and Ruby. And I also didn't know how to tell you about my feelings. I even thought I would never say it because I didn't think you liked me. Ethan cautiously moved closer to the woman. He looked into her eyes for a long, long time. Kate, are you serious about this? Not just to make me stay? She laughed. What do you mean? That I can't manage without you? I'll smack you right now. The man smiled. Please smack me, so I know this isn't a dream. And now I'm going to hug you. Or maybe I'll just kiss you. For a long time, the last guests at the cottages could see two figures sitting, hugging, and silently looking at the water. No one disturbed them. Sometimes, it's necessary to just be silent, feeling the presence of a loved one next to you.